Before we start with questions, there were two things that I have in the questions list labeled A and B that I just thought were interesting. And the first one is, like, I guess could be categorized under fun facts. And the Old Norse word for faith is true. The second one is that after our last conversation, I've been thinking about the nature of religion. And it seems to me the more perfect a faith seems upfront, the more likely the chances are that either the faith is a cult or the aspirant deluded. A good religion should be like a good marriage. Lots of faults, but shared love from both sides, not in spite of the faults, but sometimes precisely because of them. If all religions are one, and I believe they are at the highest levels, then the choice should not be made based on how true they are, since they all are true, but on contingent factors such as aesthetic appeal.
How true they are. Well, you could say, since beauty is the splendor of the true, that you can always go for beauty.
Doesn't this say that aesthetics is a measure of the true? Isn't that implicit in this question?
Well, it is, but I think I would replace it with beauty. I mean, whether that's beauty in performing the liturgy, or beauty of the place you worship, beauty of the, what sacred art you think you have, beauty, then you probably at least wouldn't be evil. But I think it's possible, I think it's possible to discern, and for some people they'll never discern, and that's just the way it is. It's true, but religion should be like a good marriage. But I think there's a lot of dysfunctional marriages out there.
Well, it should be like a good marriage in the sense that a good marriage has good communication.
Yes, and good intentions.
And good intention, yes. And one's dialogue with God, which is one's life, should be that.
Yeah. When you get the call, don't hang up.
Right.
But one of the things that I was trying to say is simply that, when someone joins a religion, they tend to think, oh, this is perfect, and search for perfection, but there's no such thing as perfection in any sort of contingent thing, and all religions are contingent. And, if you look at it as like, I want perfection, you're going to eventually be disappointed. And if you join a religion that actually says they're perfect and presents themselves as being perfect, then you're probably looking at a cult, because the reality is, for any true, authentic religion to be true and authentic, they have to be able to self-criticize. And religions historically have been really bad about that.
Yes, well, in fact, only God is perfect.
Yes, exactly.
And a religion which is, after all, manifested in the created world has to be less than perfect.
Sure. And it's going to require that imperfect beings practice the religion. So, what do you expect? Everybody that comes to the religion needs to be saved. But in the meantime, they're going to do violence to the religion. Yeah, it's kind of like the world situation. I think a lot of it's just, we're not going to save the world. We're not going to wake up the world or enlighten the world. It's just, it's not in the cards. It's not in the nature of the reality we live.
Yes, it's an interesting contrast, because religions essentially offer the perfect, but are not the perfect means.
Right.
Because they necessarily, it's the contrast between that which is universally true and the individual differences that are the result of manifestation.
Right. And one shouldn't expect to become perfect. One should expect to learn how to be connected with the perfect, connected to the perfect. You and I don't get to be perfect. And I know it's not going to happen to me. So I guess I'm I just don't have a lot of hope for the situation in letter B, and I don't have a lot of hope for the world situation. And, we're going to go through some kind of dark ages again, it seems.
Inshallah.
Yeah, well, for simply the dark ages we've had in the past, that might be good, but they could be really dark.
Yeah, I said that tongue in cheek. I mean, because the dark ages that existed weren't really that dark, but the dark ages that are coming probably will be really awful. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And if that eye have no light, how great is blindness, or whatever. Yeah.
All right, so on to the first official question. Sometimes the thing we think will save us spiritually, physically, or psychologically actually destroys us. How does one determine good choices from bad ones?
Pay attention, see if
Yes,
one of those things hurts.
right, and don't place your faith in the object, but in the action, in
Right.
the effect it has on your soul, your well-being, your happiness, rather than for its own sake.
Yes, that which will save us, we can't know in advance, but we can be oriented to it and make all the space you can for it and try to stay in touch with it, and you may finally learn what it is.
Yes.
Or maybe not, but you would have spent your life well.
Yes, well, if one practices one's life with a view to the transcendent and a practice that's consistent with that, and if one stays open to the changes in one's life, that's a conscientious effort at not being deluded.
Yes. And with that attitude, the highest truth will draw us toward it.
Yes.
We're not going to go out and capture it somewhere.
Well, all of the things I'm describing are part of, I think, doing your best in terms of living a spiritual life, and wanting to know the good and wanting to be in the grace of God, but you have to do your best.
Yeah, and your actions must be based on the truest, the truest thing you can come up with at the moment. And if you value truth, you'll pay attention to what you do and what happens.
Yes, and you will engage with that.
Yes, because if truth is important, you're going to be looking for it all the time, or at least using it as a measure on the relative level. So it's, it really is a kind of integrity, really, a kind of dedication to honesty, which is similar to truth. But, I think a lot of people that are deluded have asked for it, and I would include myself in that category. There's a reason that, I followed this thing longer than smelled right.
Which thing was that?
The Tariqa.
Oh,
Bloomington Tariqa. That, I still wanted to believe so much that I was, not really interested in looking too closely at what was in front of me. Finally, I couldn't ignore it, but it's kind of like a big lie. It's too scary to just believe it.
Particularly when everybody around you is telling you that this is it.
Yes, exactly.
And how could it be any more perfect?
Yeah, and if that were not true, then what's happened to your world?
And Sheikh al-Bashir, you once told me there are two kinds of people in the world, those kinds of people that care about what's right and those kinds of people that care about what's true. And, I think most people fall into the former camp, and there's nothing wrong with that per se, but when things go wrong and you're living in a den of lies, when you're focused on what's right and someone's telling you this is right, and you're not focused on really what the truth is, you can get deluded more easily.
Yeah, certainly.
Certainly, that's right. And it's very cult-like to be surrounded by people who are telling you how perfect everything is.
Yes, even if it's not a cult, it may be cult-like.
Yes.
I mean, if you live in a community of true believers in something, it's cult-like.
Angela?
Well, I really don't have anything more to add than what's been said, but I think the underlying point is the truths can appear in many forms, and one must be ready to receive the truth when it appears in that specific form.
Good point.
Yeah,
Yeah. Otherwise, you're asserting your own criteria.
that's right.
Right. And also, like, when I think something is true, that doesn't necessarily mean now that I have to go outside and, sort of prophesize it that, oh, this is the only truth.
Yeah,
Because, like I said, truth appears in many forms, and one has to be ready to receive that specific form.
yeah. The people who want to do what's right are interested in truth, but only on a certain level. So I'm glad they want to do what's right.
Right. And, many times that whole truth hunting becomes like an intellectual exercise,
Yeah,
which honestly leads to nowhere from my experience, because it's not like doing a PhD in what truth is and where to find it. It's all in the experience of it.
Sometimes it's not about finding the truth, it's opening yourself up to allow the truth to infiltrate your very being.
that's true. That's true. You have to prepare a place for it. You want it to come and be the guest.
All right. So what is the most important thing that philosophy has taught you?
I'd say to think critically, and also to understand that critical thinking has its limits.
Yeah.
It's like science. It's good for a lot. but
Yeah.
finally, that's my quick response to your question. That's without thinking about it much. Any other responses?
I would say that somehow, in spite of it and in spite of myself, I got the notion from philosophy is that there is such a thing as higher truth. And it's obvious a lot of the philosophers were trying to find it. And good for them, but a lot of them didn't find it, which is a shame. I mean, philosophy really, I think, was really very beneficial to me. But it's not the word, it's the feeling that you're in the proximity of something higher that you can get by really delving into it. But, if it's just an intellectual discipline, it's worthless. I mean, philosophy should inspire.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, how can it be true?
Most philosophy today is worthless, completely worthless, because it's just language games, really. And on the other hand, you also have a lot of philosophy, classic philosophy, not just secular classic philosophy of the Enlightenment, but even, scholastic philosophy from the Muslims and Christians that I just think is totally worthless. I mean, some metaphysical speculation can help one, and certainly anyone that's experienced a profound event like a mystic will try to put that in words. But I think there's really two kinds of good philosophy. The philosophy that tells you how to be in the world, and the philosophy that teaches you how to better discern things. Everything else is really a bit pointless. It's dialectic, great. It might be fun for certain people, but it's ultimately not going to get you anywhere.
And that's the value in pursuing it can be that you discover that. Right.
And there's some value in reading metaphysics. Like, let's say Plotinus. He's someone that, if you believe the reports, actually experienced transcendent unity with the divine on 4 occasions. So there are some people that say if you read something like that, that's almost a form of revelation, and you contemplate it, that itself can lead you somewhere. And that's great. That kind of metaphysics is okay. But Plotinus is not really writing systematic treatises either. He always tied everything to directly living your life. You're not going to really get enlightenment from reading Hegel's, logic. On the other hand, despite his irreligiosity, I believe that I've learned to be a better person through Nietzsche. And I also think there's a lot to be had in Kierkegaard. He sprinkles in some metaphysics with a lot of ethics and always ties everything to directly lived life. And that's actually really wonderful. And I think we can learn a lot that way. I also think sometimes even the more abstruse things are helpful, because how do we know good from bad? How do we know good from evil? How do we do all these things? It's about paying attention and discerning. And I think philosophy is a lot like going out and running, 5 kilometers every morning, just like that's good for the body. Sometimes philosophy is not going to enlighten you, but it'll give you certain exercises that'll prepare you for insights, and it'll help you to discern things better than you otherwise would.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yes, I also agree.
All right. What precisely is permanent and what transitory in a person? Just a really simple, easy question that, all of the theologians of all time have all been agreed upon. So,
Right, of course.
If it pertains to a person, it's already impermanence.
Yes, that's because it's particular.
Yes.
And to some degree objective, but that which is permanent is not the objective, it's the subjective. It's the infinite subjectivity slash consciousness slash awareness slash divinity. That's what's permanent.
Yep.
Everything else is
contingent.
Can't stay.
Yeah, exactly. And a good spiritual path, you'll cooperate with it, not staying.
But most religions do say that there is something permanent. And I was really racking my brain here. What do I use? Do I say self? Do I say person? Do I say I?
Yeah.
Because obviously, and I knew that whatever word I chose, you're going to respond the exact way you did. Like, essentially, I want to get beyond that. And, every single religion says that whatever you call it, the person, that there is something beyond the contingent that is permanent, and not just the identityless divine that animates it, but that there's something else, something deeper, something more that's, let's say, given as a gift by the grace of God or the gods or the nature spirit or whatever you have you. And that's the question I'm asking. What is it? Is it a soul? Is it the memory of the person's life by the divine, as Whitehead would say, objective immortality? What is it?
Well, I don't know, but we wouldn't be here if we weren't there, if it weren't here with us.
Is it not that particularity of the divinity that sees itself?
It sees itself. Sees its particularity, you mean?
No, the sort of objectification of the divinity so that it can know itself objectively, not simply subjectively. That requires an object like us, and that's what we do here.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have a formulation, Badria?
I honestly don't know. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I know, because I think that outside of a few people that have experienced certain things mystically, and I've experienced certain connections with the world and the earth, but I can't say that I've come into communion with the divine directly. And, I think only someone that's directly experienced permanence in this life can tell you what that is.
Yeah.
And as soon as it escapes their mouth, it's not what it was. All I can say is that it's my faith or belief that there is something permanent, that we are not just contingent. But what that is, I can't say.
Neither can I, but I'm sort of expecting it to still be there when I'm not. So, and my experience of it might not go away completely. You know, I find that I tend to believe, and not to claim it's correct, but I sort of have this underlying feeling that, well, that there is something, and that I have no idea what form it will take, and whether it will have, you know, separate senses for experience and what they might be designed to sense. Just don't know. And I think, you know, you find out when you get there.
And that's the thing. Pretty much every saint, sage, prophet throughout history, including some of the ones that have said things that people generally don't want to hear, including reformers, and basically everyone, no matter what time, place, you know, religious formulation they have, popularizers, philosophers, theologians, like, you know, and mystics that have experienced things and then go and preach to the people, you know, all of them, though the formulations are different, they all say something, whether it's the Buddhists that say there's, you know, the karma passing along like a candle lighting another candle, and it's basically the flame passing, or it's, you know, the
Yeah.
Catholic tradition of the raised subtle body, that's a body but not the body, it's not
Yeah.
the same body, or it's a soul that reincarnates as in the Platonic tradition, or even that it's, you know, something like something else. They all say something, you know, and let's just say science were to say there is no soul. Science is rather arrogant. You know, there's a lot of things that science can't see that are there, and there's a lot of funny things where you read science from a few decades ago and they're like, these things don't exist, they can't exist, and then they discover them and they're like, okay, they exist.
Yeah.
And you know, that's irrelevant. Even if there was no soul other than the body, if one believes in God and believes that God created the world rather than natural things, and clearly it had to be that way, because even if you believe in the Big Bang and everything, like the law of nature says nothing can be created nor destroyed, and clearly something was there to begin with, and so there clearly had to be some sort of miracle to create things. Even if the miracle was God creating this infinitely dense piece of matter that went kaboom. And ultimately, even if the body and mind were all that there was, the divine could choose to give some form of continuance to that after the decay of this form, whether it's through reincarnation or rebirth or something else. But since the divine is infinite and doesn't forget, everything that everyone ever experienced is with the divine. So at the absolute very, 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 very least, Whitehead was right that if you believe in a God, you have to believe in objective immortality. But again, that's not what every sage and saint throughout history have said. They've said that there's something more, though what they can say, that's what they differ on. And so we can't be sure about that. But I would say that we have every reason to be hopeful that there's some sort of continuance.
Yes.
Otherwise, really, what's the point? You know, if God put us here to experience things himself, great, but God is also good. God is not cruel. And I don't believe that God is a chess master that's just playing a game with himself. I believe that it's something that we might not understand, but that there's a reason and purpose to things.
Right. Well, you know, like with science discovering particles sometimes I think the particles may not exist until they look for them. So, are we really objects, or are we the product of looking? The object that has to appear for looking to be what it is.
Siddhi Talha, if you keep on going on this path, I'm going to have to call you Siddhi Talha Berkeley.
Well, I kind of like him.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff in especially some of his writings that are less read. His 3 dialogues on Hylas and Polonius. It's good stuff. Actually, it greatly influenced Blake.
Well, he had to come up with some good stuff because he saw some stuff.
Sheikh al-Bashir, you haven't been saying much.
No, I've been listening with interest. I don't think there's anything I can add to what I did say.
Okay. When someone experiences a life-shattering tragedy and feels like things could never be good or happy again, what would your advice be?
Things always change in this world too.
This too shall pass.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And also, it's like, well, it's painful, but who says it's bad?
Yes, and these things are bad, but they necessarily have a place in things, or they wouldn't be so. And finally, the good wins.
Yes, exactly. The reality of anything comes from the good, no matter how ugly it looks. So, it's kind of like the Jamaican thing. They say, everything's gonna be all right. Don't worry.
Or as the Brits say, keep calm and carry on.
That sounds pretty darn Protestant.
On the other hand, or maybe it's on the same hand, I think it's necessary not to diminish someone's pain by explaining it away metaphysically.
Oh, no. You can't do that, but you can talk from that knowledge.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I actually really hate when that's done. It's just unfeeling and mechanical. There's pain, you experience it, you should experience it, and the best way of making that pain worse is to try to suppress it. You've got to experience it and then pass through the other side.
Yeah, because that's what it was started doing when it appeared. So let it happen. Don't fail to see the person in pain and only see a problem to be solved. You start with the empathy for the person who's in pain.